Guys, direction seems to be very muddied and murky right now, and there's not a clear direction. So we'll see in the coming days. I'm very excited to see what the Dolphins do in the coming days, with the reports of Armando Salguero saying that the Dolphins are going to be aggressive in free agency, which is very interesting. We'll see what this regime does with Adam Gase, because they can't go into this third season of the regime and be like, yep, we're rebuilding, we're starting over. After 2 seasons ago, going 10-6, getting rid of most of the players that got you there, it's absolutely ridiculous. So that's what the situation we're in right now. If you guys don't already know, this is the show where we talk about all the Dolphins news you need to know about. And boy, do we have a jam-packed episode for you guys this week. The Dolphins were not kidding around when they said they were going to be aggressive in free agency. And man, oh man, they made moves that I couldn't even have fathomed they made. And we're about to get into all of that in this week's episode. So this first news story: Dolphins to sign wide receiver Albert Wilson. Obviously, he has put pen to paper since then. This story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins will sign wide receiver Albert Wilson to a 3-year, $24 million deal, according to Ian Rappaport of NFL.com. Miami still has a relatively deep wide receiver group, even after trading the franchise tag Jarvis Landry to the Browns last week. Currently, the club's depth chart is headlined by Devontae Parker and Kenny Stills. While Leonte Crew, Jakeem Grant, and Rashawn Scott are among the other pass catchers in South Florida, Wilson, though, will give the Dolphins another experienced option for Ryan Tannehill, or whomever Miami deploys at quarterback in 2017. 2017 marked the best overall campaign for Wilson, who entered the NFL as an undrafted free agent in 2014. Last season, Wilson posted a career high in receptions 42, yards 554, and touchdowns 3. Among receivers with fewer than 50 receptions, Wilson ranked 8th in Football Outsiders' DVOA, meaning he was extremely effective on a per-play basis despite his lack of volume. The Dolphins aren't the only club that expressed interest in Wilson, as the Bears, who now employ Wilson's Kansas City's former offensive coordinator Matt Nagy as their head coach, and has also been linked to the free agent wideout. That was confusing. Pro Football Focus ranked Wilson as the 13th best available wideout heading into free agency. The Chiefs have already made a move to replace Wilson by agreeing with a 3-year, $48 million deal with Sammy Watkins. So this is obviously, I actually love this signing. Albert Wilson, obviously he hasn't had a ton of playing time since he was drafted, but I'm excited. Obviously he had his best season last season, and every year he's improved. So I'm very, very excited about Albert Wilson, what his ability in this offense. And obviously we're going to get into another player later on that's also going to, I'm expecting to share snaps with him. So he's not going to take like a load that he's never taken before. So we're not asking him to do a ton more than he did at Kansas City, but I'm almost 100% sure he probably will be the starter coming out of the slot. You know, he brings an explosiveness to this offense, especially at that slot position. Obviously, Adam Gase is infamous at this point for throwing bubble screens. He was, besides Tyreek Hill, and you can make it probably an argument that he was better at running some of those tunnel screens and those bubble screens in Kansas City, which they did a ton there. So it's going to be interesting to see how we utilize him in that aspect, because he made a lot of people miss, even though there were people right in his face when he caught the ball. He did a lot of that when we played him, so he fits the scheme to a T. Obviously, he comes from a quick passing game from Andy Reid. He knows how, to get open quick. He's been in that kind of an offense for his entire career, so that shouldn't be too big for him. So he's a schematic fit as well as a very good football player, and I think it's a really good move by the Dolphins to really go out and get a very productive slot player who, again, almost produced 600 yards receiving. And we don't need a receiver to come in that's going to play the slot position. What I mean by what I'm about to say, do we have a number one receiver on this team? Who knows? Hopefully Devontae Parker will become that. But Albert Wilson is not that. We needed to get a slot receiver. We did. We got one of the best on the market, if not the best slot receiver on the market in Albert Wilson. He's young. He has a lot of upside. And like I said, he's a good, solid football player. And he's a schematic fit. As a personality, obviously the Dolphins have made a lot of big news in saying they want a culture change. They want to change their locker room. They want players that fit the scheme and want to do all the details. Like Adam Gase always says, he wants players that execute the little things in the details. Albert Wilson, from every interview that I've seen with Andy Reid and Albert Wilson, this kid is a gritty kid. He's not afraid to block downfield. He even said, I'm not scared of safeties. I'll go down there and scrap. He patents his game after Steve Smith. Very similar players, both about the same height, so they have to overcompensate in other areas. He's very hard to bring down in the open field, so I'm excited to have an explosive player like him on this roster, and like I said, he's a schematic fit as well. So a really good, solid signing by the Dolphins to get a good, solid player in Albert Wilson, who's going to help fill the void that Jarvis Landry has left. So I think this is a fantastic move by the Dolphins, and it had Adam Gase written all over it, in my opinion. So I'm very excited about that piece of news there. Dolphins re-sign Walt Aikens. Walt Aikens is re-signing with the next news story, excuse me. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Walt Aikens is re-signing with the Dolphins on a 2-year deal. A league source tells Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald the defensive back is now under contract with Miami through the 2019 season. Aikens played all 16 games last season in a backup role and tallied 1 forced fumble and 2 tackles without an interception. Obviously, this is good news because Walt Aikens is a really good special teams player, and it's nice that we retained him, and I thought he was one of the few free agents that we had that we needed to retain. We talked about that in last week's episode when we went through all the free agents that we had this year. I thought he was definitely one of the players we needed to keep. He's been very active on special teams for a while for us, and I'm very, very, very happy that we kept him. All right, this next news story, obviously one of the bigger news stories of the week. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins signed wide receiver Danny Amendola. Danny Amendola is staying in the AFC East, but he'll do that with a different team. The Patriots free agent has agreed to sign with the Dolphins, according to NFL Network. Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald has confirmed the news. It's a 2-year deal worth $12 million with $8.2 million guaranteed, according to Peter Schrager of NFL.com. Peter Schrager notes the deal includes incentives, but it's not immediately clear if those incentives are factored into the $12 million figure. Amendola was vocal about his desire to stay with the Patriots, but the New England Patriots cap crunch has led him to sign elsewhere. He'll face his old friends twice per season, and he might make the Pats regret the decision to let him go. Amendola accepted several pay cuts in order to stick on the Patriots in recent years, but the offers were too good this time around for the wide receiver to stay put. The veteran earned roughly $6 million over the last 3 years with the Patriots, and he'll earn more than that in guarantees alone with Miami. After a down season in 2016, Amendola racked up 61 receptions, 659 yards, and 2 touchdowns during the 2017 season. Stepping up with a 26, 348-2 line in the postseason, Amendola has never topped 700 receiving yards in a single season, but he is a strong weapon in today's quick passing game. Whew. All right, so the thing I love about this signing is Danny Amendola is a chain mover. He's really good on third down. He's a great route runner, and that fits Adam Gase's offense to a T. A lot of people are comparing him to Wes Welker, and the reason I'm going to compare him to Wes Welker is because Wes Welker, when he left the Patriots, went to the Denver Broncos, obviously, and then that offense went on to have the best offense ever in a regular season statistically. And Wes Welker was a huge part of that. I think he caught 12 touchdowns or something like that. He caught a ton of balls, or he didn't catch a ton of balls that season, but made a ton of impact plays, was killer in the red zone. And guess who was the offensive coordinator that year? Obviously Adam Gase. And what he was able to do with a Wes Welker in that offense makes me excited to see what Danny Amendola can do in this offense. And I said the same thing about Julius Thomas when we traded for him, but this is different. Obviously Danny Amendola does have an injury history, don't get me wrong, but I think he is not going to get a ton of playing time, especially since the signing of Albert Wilson. I think those two are going to share minutes. Sometimes they might be on the field at the same time, who knows, some kind of crazy packages we could throw out there. But I think Danny Amendola is a great signing, and I think he will stay healthy for less playing time and stuff of that nature if we take care of him in that way, depending on how we use him. But even if he does get hurt, we have Albert Wilson, so there's still a ton of depth on this roster, even if he did get injured. So it's not a huge hit, unlike when Julius Thomas came down here, obviously lost every bit of athleticism he ever had. So this is definitely different. But back to my original point, I really do believe that if Adam uses him like he did Wes Welker, and they're very similar players, just in the fact that they're both great route runners. They both have elite quickness, and obviously Danny has great hands. If that kind of production comes to Miami, and that's how we utilize him, and if we can find that type of production that Adam had with Wes Welker, it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be very, very, very dangerous. Between the two receivers, obviously, with Danny having, I think, what was it? He had 659. Albert almost had 600, so obviously that's in the thousands. Between the two, the receptions is close to 100, so that's close to Jarvis Landry, and we're going to be spreading the ball around more, and we have different flavors. It's not just one player. Albert Wilson, is a different type of player than Danny Amendola, and Danny Amendola is exactly what you want in your slot receiver. Smart player, knows how to run routes, and can move the chain. So another really good signing. And again, we don't even have to have him stay healthy. It's not like we're counting on him to stay healthy at all. If he gets hurt, if he misses the entire season, big whoop. It doesn't matter. We have Albert Wilson. So I love that signing. This next news story: Dolphins to retain Juwan James. Obviously, the Dolphins retain Juwan James, and we're going to get into that right now. Juwan James is staying put as the right tackle tease on his Instagram account. He'll remain with the Dolphins. There won't be any renegotiation of a deal, as he'll remain under contract for $9 million in 2018 per Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. The Dolphins were shopping their longtime right tackle this week, presumably to see if a market developed prior to James's fifth-year option becoming fully guaranteed on Wednesday. The sides are discussing a new deal on Monday, but James had enough leverage to hold his ground. James's new deal gives him an opportunity to stay in sunny Miami and build on what was arguably the best season of his career to date, even though it was shortened by injury. For his 8 games, James graded as the league's 17th ranked offensive tackle last season per Pro Football Focus. However, the former first-round pick has seen injuries cut 2 of his seasons short. He has yet to prove he can be a consistent, healthy option in Miami, likely leading to his trade efforts. Obviously, this is one of the things that I really, really, really wanted to happen, is retain Juwan James. I think he's a fantastic right tackle. I think he's one of the better pass blocking tackles in the league. A lot of teams in the NFL would kill to have a player like him. It's just, consistency, not in the fact that his play, but just the consistency, knowing that he's going to be there week to week. And I think the Dolphins made the right move of retaining him and retaining Sam Young, who they're still working on a deal with right now, I think, if it hasn't already gotten done. So they have their insurance policy there. Sam Young plays well. He's a good backup. He's not a starter. He plays well in the absence of others. So I love the move, though. I love the move. I thought we really, really needed to keep Juwan James, because it would have been terrible if there was, obviously we would have to fill a tackle position, it would have been a whole rigmarole, and another big piece, and that is a huge piece on your offensive line, obviously, with all these edge rushers in the NFL. So having a protector on the edge like Juwan James is great, and I think the Dolphins did not do the wrong thing investing the $9 million to Juwan James. I thought that was a really, really good move by the Dolphins. Like I said, the Broncos would have shot somebody to have a tackle like that. That's, you don't want to be the team that struggles at the tackle position. Next news story: Dolphins release Ndamukong Suh. The Dolphins are releasing 5-time Pro Bowl defensive lineman Ndamukong Suh as a post-June 1 cut, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. See here. For the Dolphins to change their culture, the move signals another attempt for the Dolphins to change their culture, which has now resulted in the departure of 3 of their top players within the last calendar year: Suh, Jarvis Landry, and J.H.I. Suh now ranks as the best free agent currently available. Suh is due to make $16 million in base salary next season, with a cap hit of $26.1 million. It was reported last week the Dolphins were considering shedding the sizable cap hit by cutting Suh. The 31-year-old was set to enter the 4th year of his 6-year, $114 million deal with Miami, which was an NFL record at the time. Suh was graded out by Pro Football Focus as the league's the 4th best interior defender, which should create a decent bidding war for his services, blah, 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 blah. Suh has seen a decline in sack totals in each of his 3 seasons with the Dolphins, since racking up 8.5 in his final year with the Lions in 2014. With Suh reportedly out of the picture, the Dolphins still have Devon Godchaux, Jordan Phillips, Vincent Taylor, and Gabe Martin on their roster as defensive linemen, along with Robert Quinn. I don't know why people said that the trade for Robert signaled that the Dolphins. I didn't never understood that. But anyway, yeah, this Ndamukong Suh thing is very interesting. I think it needed to happen. Obviously, you know, the old saying, the old cliche in the NFL is you can't just have one great player. If you're not close to a championship, you can't pay one player and just neglect all the other positions on your team. We were paying him quarterback money. Obviously, Suh is not that kind of a player where he can affect the game of football at that high of a level. He's a great player. He's one of the greatest interior linemen of his generation. He'll go down as a Hall of Famer, but he was getting way too much money. I totally agree with that. Obviously, he gave us I can't remember how many years exactly, but all of those years, he gave us great football. It wasn't like he was an Albert Hainsworth. He came here and just stole money. He came here, made some plays. He was a great player for us, and it is what it is. But again, when we signed him, we weren't one game away from the Super Bowl. We weren't the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we still needed to build a roster, and it was just a premature signing. We just weren't in that state to sign a player like that. That move was like we're one piece away type of a move when the Dolphins were multiple pieces away. We still had a young quarterback on the roster we had to build around and all that other stuff. There was so many holes at the time on the offensive side of the football to fix. So to sign Suh, I think, was a little premature. I thought we should have. I think if you went to a team that was one game away, that deal would have made a whole lot more sense, because that $100 million, essentially, at least you hope, will put you over the hump and win you a Super Bowl. And we just were not at that point yet as a franchise. So that's my opinion on the whole Suh debacle and stuff of that nature. But yeah, he is going to leave a big hole. But in terms of replacing him, I think Davon Godchaux had a very solid rookie season when he got playing time. Obviously, he didn't get a ton of snaps. Him and Vincent Taylor, when they were out there, I thought played solid minutes. I think Davon Godchaux is a pretty good pass rusher. I think that's what he does best. But he had his moments where he flew into the opposition's backfield and wreaked havoc in the opposition's backfield in the running game. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins do in the draft if they try to address that. Maybe in the first round. I doubt that. There is obviously Vita from the defensive tackle from Washington. He's a very good player, and somebody had us taking him in their mock draft. I can't remember who, but I don't like that move so much. I don't think the Dolphins should take a nose tackle in the first round, but we'll see what they do in the draft to maybe add more depth there. But I think Davon Godchaux or Jordan Phillips would be sufficient starters. I think Jordan Phillips has the talent to be above average defensive tackle in this league, but we just haven't seen it on a consistent basis. But I think Davon Godchaux, out of all the defensive tackles on this roster, has a chance to have consistently the most impact at his position. Next news story, Dolphins released Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas will be back on the market after the Dolphins followed through with their decision to cut the former Pro Bowl tight end. The Dolphins will save $6.6 million as a result. No need to really go on here. We already knew this was going to happen. This was just a straight up fail. Big old fail. Should never really have made this trade. We were really counting on Julius Thomas being his former self, and man, oh man, was he far out of his prime. It just really didn't work out. He struggled to consistently get separation and get open on a play-to-play basis, and not only that, but he couldn't catch. Obviously, his effort on that Saints interception in the red zone, which was the tipping point in that game, and the Avalanche just kind of fell from there. He just was not a good move by the Dolphins. Dolphins reconstruct Ryan Tannehill's deal. The Dolphins continue to create cap space on a busy day after making the decision to cut Ndamukong Suh. The Dolphins have agreed on a restructure with its offensive centerpiece player. Miami reworked Ryan Tannehill's contract per Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald and will save $11.2 million in cap space because of this move, coupled with the team's restructuring of Rashad Jones' contract. The Dolphins have created $17.8 million in additional cap space. So great, hats off to our quarterback for taking that hit. Obviously, in the long run, it won't be that big of a hit, but not many quarterbacks do that nowadays. Not many players do that nowadays, and especially Rashad Jones, who's a safety and not a quarterback. Quarterbacks If you're half decent in this league, get jobs easily. Safeties do not, and hats off to Rashad for doing that for us. Let's see here. This next news story, William Hayes re-signs with the Dolphins. I think this is one of the best moves we've made this offseason. We're going to get to some more moves, but this was huge. And if William Hayes can stay healthy, he's going to be an impact player on this team. Plus, he can play defensive tackle at a high level. Obviously, he played in the interior of a defensive line for many years in that 3-4 system long ago. So I think he was in a 3-4 system in Tennessee. I can't remember. Maybe he was in a 4-3. I can't remember. But he has played in the interior of a defensive line, even when he was in a 4-3 system with the Rams. He's very versatile. William Hayes re-signs with the Dolphins. William Hayes is headed back to Miami. Mike Garafolo of NFL.com reports. The veteran defensive lineman was traded to Miami last offseason following the 5 seasons with the Rams organization. The 32-year-old proceeded to play in 10 games for the Dolphins, compiling 10 tackles and a single sack. This was a far cry from his performance with the Rams, as Hayes collected at least 4 sacks each of his seasons from 2014 to 2016. Despite the underwhelming numbers, Pro Football Focus was fond of his performance in 2017. Hayes played only 717 snaps, so he wasn't eligible for the site's ranking. However, his grade would have earned him a spot among the top 20 edge defenders. The site also ranked Hayes favorably in each of the 5 previous seasons. Like I said, William isn't this guy who's going to he's not a pass rush specialist by any means at all, but he is a great run defender, and that is something that the Dolphins need. And if he can stay healthy on a consistent basis, at least give us 14 games this upcoming season, that is going to be huge, valuable minutes. He is a really good role player. He's an above average run defender, and he has, people forget, I think he ran a 4.6 40 at the combine. He's an athletic defensive end, so if he does get loose in the passing game, he can chase down a quarterback. So that does give you a lot of interesting stuff that you can do with moving William Hayes inside, maybe in a pass rushing situation. So I love that a move, because that's something that I was talking about in last week's episode. Is I really, really wanted to retain Juwan and William, and I'm really happy that the Dolphins got those two deals done. This next news story: Dolphins to release center Mike Pouncey. This is tough news. I love Mike, and you get, as a fan, it's hard not to get nostalgic about things. And Mike obviously didn't win a ton of games for us. I think he had one playoff appearance in 2016 with us, and he didn't win a lot of games, but he was a great player for us. He was obviously a fun personality. He was a Pro Bowler, and a lot of really, really, really fond memories of him as our center, and it sucks that he's gone. Dolphins center Mike Pouncey has been released, according to Adam Schefter of ESPN. Let's see here. While Schefter reports Pouncey requested his release, Miami asked Pouncey to accept a 50% pay reduction, which he declined. Oof, that is a big pay reduction there. Pouncey now joins Ryan Jensen as one of the top available centers in free agency. Jensen is coming off a tremendous year in which he ranked as the 6th best center by Pro Football Focus. Pouncey did not look like his usual self last year, although he appeared in all 16 games for the Dolphins. His hip injury slowed him down. In the past, we've heard that he may eventually require a hip replacement, which would lead him to retire. So it wasn't that the Dolphins weren't willing to have him as their center. It was obviously they thought he should take a pay cut to clear more cap space because of the hip issue. Obviously, Pouncey wasn't willing to do so. He requested his release, and we granted that. And what the Dolphins were able to pull off to replace him is, in my opinion, immaculate. The Dolphins got really lucky with who they replaced him with, but it sucks to see a player like that move on. It sucked to see a lot of these players. Like I've said before, Suh really does hit me in the heart, but players that we've drafted like Mike Pouncey and Jarvis that have been Pro Bowlers mean a whole lot more to us as fans, and it sucks to see those guys walk. Let's see here. Even though the Dolphins, I think, we'll get into that here in a second. Let's see here. Dolphins to sign guard Josh Sinton. Excuse me. I think every player, every fan right now is rejoicing when they heard this news for the first time, because he is a guard, and the Dolphins finally, we should have got him last year, but the Dolphins finally invest in a very, very good guard. The Dolphins have agreed to a 2-year deal with the free agent Josh Sitton, according to Adam Schefter of ESPN.com. Miami hosted Sitton on a visit on Wednesday. Sitton's contract will be worth $15 million in base value, Ian Rappaport of NFL.com tweets, adding that it could be a max at $18 million. The veteran guard will receive $8 million in guarantees. The guard has been a long problem in South Beach, but the Dolphins now have landed a former All-Pro in Sitton. The 31-year-old Sitton has experienced both left and right guard and could conceivably slide into either spot for Miami. Whether he lands, whatever position he lands at, Sitton will be playing next to the new Dolphin center, as the club released veteran Mike Pouncey earlier today. Sitton originally joined the Bears in 2016 after surprisingly being released by the division rival Packers. Although minor health issues have been a concern, Sitton has been outstanding in the Windy City. Just last season, Sitton ranked as the 5th best guard in the league per Pro Football Focus, and his marks have remained steady throughout the duration of his career. Despite that production, Chicago opted to decline Josh Sitton's $8 million option for 2018. This is a great move by the Dolphins. The only issue with this, the only problem I have, is his health. He has a very bad injury history, and this is something that the Dolphins have struggled with. Now, whether the Dolphins will go out and get a guard is beyond me. We still have Isaac Asiata in-house, so we don't know if he'll ever amount to anything. Whether the Dolphins will maybe draft some more, maybe a guard late in the... We don't have to draft one in the first 3 rounds. Not even in the 4th round. I'm just saying maybe take a chance on somebody in the later rounds of the draft, because Josh Sitton does have an injury history, and we don't want another... his name is escaping me right now. The guard that we signed last year from Chicago, I can't remember his name right now for some reason. But obviously when we signed... for some reason, can't remember his name. Obviously, he missed most of the season until, I think, week 8, maybe even later than that. But he, obviously, the talent level there, huge difference. When Josh Sitton is on the field, he is a dominant offensive lineman. He brings a physical presence. He's coming from a team that couldn't pass the football at all, that was physical smash-mouth football, and that is exactly what this offensive line needs. And apparently, from all these interviews that we've had with him, he's a great guy. He's a funny dude. Reminds me of, he has that Joe Thomas type of a personality. If you've ever seen an interview with Joe Thomas, the Cleveland Browns left tackle, he's a very goofy dude. I think he's going to be a fan favorite. I can't wait to... it's weird for anybody to be excited about a guard, but hallelujah, thank God, we have a really solid guard if he can stay healthy. So, again, there are some things that come with Josh Sitton, but hopefully, if he stays healthy, man, we're going to have, in my opinion... we're going to go right into this next move. And with this next move, I think this propels us. And with the loss of Nate Solder from the Patriots, I think we have the best offensive line in our division, which is a huge advantage. Huge advantage. Anytime you can say your team has the best anything, and especially a group as important as the offensive line in your division, it's a great thing. And what the Dolphins have been able to do with this offensive line, you just got to take your hats off for it. Let's see here. This next news story. 49ers trade center Daniel Kilgore to the Dolphins. The 49ers announced they have traded center Daniel Kilgore to the Dolphins. Kilgore will take the place of Mike Pouncey, who will be released. In the swap, the Niners will send a 7th-round pick to Miami and receive a 7th-round pick in return. Adam Schefter of ESPN.com tweets, in the deal, Miami will consume both Kilgore's contract and bonuses. Kilgore inked an extension with the San Francisco 49ers just 1 month ago, but the signing of Weston Richburg has displaced him. There was some thought that Richburg will play guard for the 49ers, but we know that he'll be lining up at his native position. Kilgore will cost the Dolphins $5.3 million in 2018, including a $2.3 million roster bonus that comes due on Thursday. After that, his cap hits of $2.7 million in 2019 and $3.6 million in 2020. Those numbers are significantly cheaper than the contract of Pouncey, who would have carried cap hits of $9.9 million and $8.2 million and $9 million over the next 3 seasons. This trade, let me tell you something about this trade. I love this trade. This is the best trade we've made in and forever. And it really, really, I love this trade. We know what we're getting. First of all, we're not taking a flyer out on a young player and, oh, is he going to be a good player? Is he not? We got a veteran, really, really solid, above average center from the San Francisco 49ers. And I have to take my hats off to the Dolphins, because they really made water out of wine, or they made water into wine with this move. They have reshuffled this offensive line, and in my opinion, we have the best offensive line in the AFCs. The Bills got rid of Cordy Glenn. The Jets' offensive line is not very good. And the Patriots lost Nate Solder, and they might actually lose, I think, Cameron Fleming as well. So what the Dolphins have been able to do with their offensive line, I think they got more physical. I think they got more durable. And I think they just got all around better with this offensive line. Now your offensive line looks like Laramie Tunsil, who I still think is going to be a very good player in this league. This is going to be his second year as a tackle, which I think is going to help him a ton with his rookie year, in quotes, at the tackle position last year. Technically, it wasn't his rookie year. Obviously, you guys know what I mean. Plugging in Josh Sitton in the interior. Plugging in Daniel Kilgore in the interior, who's obviously more reliable than Mike Pouncey was, and is cheaper as well. And he's he's a above average center. He's not a top 5 center. He's not one of the best centers in the league, but he gets the job done. He's sufficient. He's above sufficient in my opinion. And next to him, you have Jesse Davis, who was all around surprise. Obviously, Jesse needs to work on his physicality. He needs to hit the weight room. But if he can somehow figure that out and get more physical, and get more just stronger and push people off the ball at a more consistent basis and stop getting pushed back into the line of scrimmage, this offensive line is by far the best in the AFCs. The only weakly, and obviously Juwan James, we're getting back, who I think is going to get better, and I think is one of the better pass blockers in the league. And I don't need my right tackle to be a tremendous run blocker, especially in this offense, and especially in the league today. I don't need him to be Art Shell out here pulling and everything. But Jesse Davis is the only real weak. He's not even a weak link, because he is a tremendous pass blocker at the guard position as well, and at the tackle position. So Jesse Davis was obviously a huge surprise for the Dolphins last season, and if he could just get better in the running game, this offensive line is tremendous. And if Josh Sitton can stay healthy, I'm not going to say this offensive line is as talented as the Unicorns, but they're definitely more reliable. And I think this is the most reliable, durable, and the most depth if we get Sam Young back. I don't know if that's confirmed yet. You guys are going to have to tell me down in the comment section below. This is the best Dolphins offensive line in forever. Not from a talent standpoint, because some of our offensive lines on paper have been better. But from left to right and durability, this is the best offensive line Tannehill has ever had. Not even close. Not even close. And I'm serious when I say, when all this stuff went down, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I cannot believe they did this. Because usually we've heard, I don't know how many times, that the Dolphins don't value guards. And finally they took a flyer out on a guard and got the big bearded man, Josh Sitton. So this next news story. Dolphins re-signed quarterback David Fales. No need to get into the details of this. It's a 1-year deal. I think it's worth around $1 million or something crazy like that. So yeah, we'll see if he is the permanent backup. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins took a flyer out on somebody in the, maybe second to third, fourth round. Maybe a Luke Falk, whose draft stock has dropped a little bit since the combine. Maybe the Dolphins go out and take a chance on him. Kyle Luetta, somebody like Mason Rudolph, maybe some of those players the Dolphins get in later rounds. Or maybe the Dolphins get a first-round quarterback, who knows. So, yeah, I don't think David Fales is going to be the concrete backup for the Dolphins. This next news story, Dolphins to meet with running back DeMarco Murray. Free agent running back DeMarco Murray will visit with the Dolphins on Sunday, according to Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. And Jamie Fowler of ESPN reported earlier today that Miami has interest in Murray, who has also met with the Seahawks and Lions since getting a pink slip from the Titans. Murray, 30, is coming off a down season in which he amassed just 659 yards and averaged 3.6 yards per carry. Murray would certainly provide the Dolphins with some experience at running back, as the team's current options are 26 or younger. Behind projected starter Kenny Stills, Miami is also rostering Snorris Perry, Devon Smith, and Brandon Ratcliffe. So this would be a huge signing. Now listen to this. This is where it gets complicated. If the Dolphins sign DeMarco and do not draft a running back, I think this was a bad move. But if the Dolphins sign DeMarco and they can get him for cheap, I think that's a great move. And draft a young running back in the draft. I think if that happens, this is a great move. Because obviously we know this upcoming draft class is very deep in running backs, and you can get a very, very good one in the 3rd round. So as long as the Dolphins aren't just like, yeah, we got Kenyon and DeMarco, which I think is one heck of a combo, I think it would be kind of blindsided and short-sighted to say, yeah, that doesn't mean we don't have to draft a running back. So I love the move if we still take a young running back in the draft. And Kenyon, I think, is going to be a monster this upcoming season. I cannot wait. If Kenyon started the week 1, his numbers, he would have had well over 1,000 yards rushing. And it would be scary to know what his receiving numbers would be as well. So I cannot wait to see Kenyon be the starter. And I really do want the Dolphins to take DeMarco, because here's the 2 reasons why I want him the most. Number 1, he's a closer. He's a red zone threat. When we get down in the red zone, he's a power back. He can carry people to the end zone. He can make people miss in the backfield. He is one of the best at that. The best. And he's an adequate receiving back. So that's number 1. I think he could be, like I said, be a closer and rack up some rushing touchdowns. Number 2, from everything that you hear with teammates and stuff, and see how he helped change the culture in Tennessee, how he helped mentor Derrick Henry, I think he can do some of those same things with Kenyon Drake. And I think Kenyon is in desperate need of a veteran running back to show him the ropes, to really kind of iron out the wrinkles in his game and become an all-around. Not only he is already an all-around running back, but maybe to show him how to do it on a consistent basis. I think is going to be important. So yeah, like I said, this would be a great move if the Dolphins, I think, should still take a young, similar to what the Eagles did, and still taking Corey Clement, even though they have LeGarrette Blount. And eventually got J.J. They still went and got a young player there. A lot of exciting. I just want to, now that we're wrapping everything up on free agency and news, because we're going to get into some articles and opinions and hear other Dolphins' opinions on some of these things. I think this was one heck of a week for the Dolphins. I could not have especially with the offensive line. Obviously, I think they did a tremendous job of replacing Jarvis's services. They're not going to replace the man, obviously, but they replaced his production as best they could. And I think the 2 moves that they made were tremendous. And we still don't know if we have a number 1 dominant outside receiver on this roster. We still could have that. Devontae Parker, we don't know what he could be if he could stay healthy. We don't know. So that's still foggy. We don't know exactly who that's going to be. But in terms of a slot receiver, that's set for the 2018 season, which is something that the Dolphins needed to answer to. And not only did they fix the offensive line, but it was better than last year's offensive line. And I think this one is going to be by far more consistent. So I'm super excited about that. And I am so happy that the Dolphins fixed this offensive line. I am so happy. Because they invested draft picks into these tackles and Derwin James and Laramie, who are first-round picks, and they fixed the interior. I'm sorry, I hit the mic there. They fixed the interior, finally. So, thank God. Thank God. And if Josh Sitton can stay healthy. Hopefully he does. I just want 14 games out of him, and I want 4 games, and I want 8 games in November and December. That's all I want out of him. Whew. All right. Next news story. What can each quarterback in the NFL draft bring to the Miami Dolphins? This comes from the Finsider. All right, let's see here. Let's start off with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, a 6'4", 255-pounder, is a smart, poised, and accurate quarterback who is rarely rattled. The only game he looked out of rhythm was in USC's meltdown against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Most would have looked at that game as a product of trying to do too much with too little. Sam Darnold's arm is above average, but not elite, thus causing him to trust it too much, which could be the main reason for leading the FCS in turnovers. When he's on his game, his tape shows great accurate and exceptional anticipation on his throws. He also shows excellent footwork when feeling out the pressure in the pocket. He steps up and makes precise throws under pressure at the toughest moments of the game. Again, this comes from the Finsider. So yeah, Sam Darnold, there's no way he's going to be a Dolphin. We all know that. Not happening, but he would be if he somehow fell to us. Obviously, he's a future superstar in this league. I think he's by far the best quarterback in this draft. You know, he's a combination of Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen. What I mean by that is he's obviously a really, really good thrower of the ball, and he can create his own offense. So he's the best of both the worlds there. Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen is a 6'4", 226 pounds, is the most gifted thrower in the entire draft. But after another injury-riddled season, followed by an underwhelming combine performance, has damaged Rosen's stock. He could go anywhere from number 2 to number 15 overall without any certainty. If that happens, and he's there at the number 11th overall pick, it would be such a hard decision to make if he was there. If there's a situation, and I'm sorry I'm getting off topic here, but I think this is important. If there's a situation where Tremont Edmonds is out, right? He goes to the Raiders, and let's just say the 49ers get Roquan Smith. They don't get Derwin James. I think that if that situation happens, and again, it would be a tough decision not to get Derwin James because I love Derwin James. I think he's going to be a great player. I think I might take Josh Allen. And I know that sounds crazy. Or Josh Rosen, excuse me. But if that situation happens, I think the Dolphins should take a quarterback. He has the ability to make every NFL throw, but can he stay healthy and focused? He needs to convince teams that he truly loves the game and can be the teammate every coach desires. So, obviously, there's some off-the-field issues there. We don't know. I can't speak on that. Don't know him. Don't care. But from what I see on tape, he's a great quarterback. He's a great college quarterback, and he ran a pro-style offense. I think he's going to be a good player. And David Carr said something interesting. He looks like Peyton Manning, and I think that's the best pro comparison. Bill Polian also said that. Bill Polian also says he reminds him a lot of Peyton Manning. So that's high praise right there. I don't think he has Peyton's personality. I don't think he's as relatable as Peyton Manning was, but he definitely. I don't really see that, but those are obviously professionals saying that, which I think is high praise. Josh Allen it's not a secret that Josh Allen's, I keep these two mixed up all the time, arm strength is elite. He can fling it 50 plus yards in a flick of his wrist, or he can drop back and rifle it from on the opposite hash to the far sideline 20 yards down the field. He can make any throw anytime. The former Wyoming quarterback needs to improve with his mechanics and timing. Under pressure, his technique abandons him, and he becomes twitchy at times. Allen has crumbled in the pocket and fails to progress through his reads. Allen's accuracy and anticipation footwork disappears as the pocket collapses, and he has a bad habit of scrambling, stopping, and his crazy launching at his constant launching at targets. And heavily contested targets, so they're saying he throws in coverage a lot here. Despite his powerful arm, he has a tendency to miss throws on deep balls. He often overshoots his target, throwing the ball in a different zip code by the time it hits the ground. He needs to develop more touch on his throws and avoid throwing his fastball at every opportunity presented. Okay, I wanted to say something about Josh Allen. The more I think about it, the more I don't like him. Because what you see when he plays is not as special as a Baker Mayfield, and is not as special as a Josh Allen or Josh Rosen. It's not as special as a Sam Darnold. I think those guys have proven they can do it on a consistent basis from a production standpoint and what they've put on film. Josh Allen is far, far, far less than those guys, and I think that's a huge knock on him. I think he's going to be more of a project than a lot of people think. I think he's going to take a lot more time than a lot of people think, and I think that would be a great scenario for the Dolphins. But if you're like the Jets or somebody who needs a quarterback now, don't think that's a good move. I think that particular player is going to take some time, unlike a Baker Mayfield or a Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold, who's going to take way less time. And can, to be honest with you, could start week 1 if they needed to. And this whole comparison to Dan Marino, I think, is a joke. He's nothing like Dan Marino at all. If you've ever seen Dan Marino play, just go on YouTube and watch him. Even at Pitt, he threw with great. He did everything a quarterback needed to do. He had an underrated ability, by the way, of escaping pressure. He was cerebral as well. Josh Allen has nothing on Dan when it comes to football acumen and his intelligence as a quarterback. Not even close. Not even close. He's nothing like Dan Marino. He has nowhere near the release that Dan Marino has. At all. It's not even close. He's more of a John Elway guy. He's not a Dan Marino. Dan Marino was a special player. I don't think we'll ever see a pocket passer like him again. In terms of his quick release, his gunslinging ability, his ability to move into the pocket, and accompany that with his intelligence. I think it's unlike something we've ever seen before. And that's why he had so much success in the era he played in. Let's see here. I guess we'll do Baker Mayfield here, and then we'll do. All right, let's see here. I think we'll move on. Baker Mayfield, off-field issues, great playmaker, and obviously Adam Gase loves him. We've heard it a million times. We don't need to hear it again. But yeah, very interesting stuff. Again, like I said, if the Raiders and 49ers take the best linebackers and they're off the board, and maybe somebody takes Derwin James in the top 10, and somehow Baker or Josh slides, I think you're getting probably the most talented player, depending on who else is left on the board, and you're getting a quarterback. So I think that would be a very, very good move for the Dolphins. This next news story comes from the Miami Herald. This is by Adam Beasley. The odds of the Dolphins taking a defensive player at 11 have never been higher. In the amount of time, it might be the time to let the Baker Mayfield dream die, Dolphins fans. Short of mortgaging the future completely, it's hard to see how the Dolphins land Mayfield or any of other of the three top quarterbacks in next month's draft. That's the local impact of a seismic trade Saturday morning when the Jets traded up from 6 to 3, sending the Colts 3 second-round picks for the top 3 pick. The only way one can read this development is the Jets are going to use that pick on a quarterback, which means quarterbacks could conceivably go 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the draft, assuming the Browns do the smart thing and shop their second-round pick for the fourth overall. Shop a first-round pick for the fourth overall pick, which means the Dolphins would need to go from 11 to 2 or 4 to get Mayfield, Josh Rosen, or Josh Allen, or Sam Darnold. The cost to do that certainly more than the Jets gave up to move these spots. You could be talking 3 first-round picks or 2 first and 2 seconds. And any quarterback not named Brady or Rodgers is worth that. That's 100% true. 100% true. We don't need a Ricky Williams situation on our hands. That's the bad news. The good, the odds are great that there will be a very good defensive player at the 11th overall pick should they stay there. Georgia's Raekwon Smith would instantly turn a dicey linebacker situation into a great one. Washington's Vita Vea would be a plug-and-play at defensive tackle with Suh if Ndamukong Suh is gone, which he obviously left. Does Alabama's corner Minka Fitzpatrick fall out of the top 10? How about Virginia Tech's Tremaine Edmonds, a versatile linebacker? How about Florida State's do everything safety Derwin James? Let me tell you something right now. If Minka Fitzpatrick and Derwin James are there, first of all, if Minka's there, definitely take him. But if I know I just would say I don't know. Derwin James is so good, man. If the Dolphins got either one of those guys, it would be a steal. With the Dolphins' trenches secured, it's hard to see how they could take one of the Notre Dame offensive linemen. So think defense at 11. The odds have never been higher. The Dolphins will take one on that side in April. I agree with that, and we saw it with Malik Hooker, and we saw it with Marshawn Lattimore, who were projected top 10 picks, who fell well out of the top 10. Obviously, I think Marshawn went to the 11th overall pick to the Saints, and I think Malik went to the 15th overall pick to the Colts. So I would not be surprised if Derwin was there or if Minka was there. And if they are there, I think you got to take them. I actually like those two better than I do the linebackers. And it would be awesome if the Dolphins got one of those two, traded back up into the second round without giving their second round pick up, and got Evans from Alabama. I would love that move if they did that, and then still had a second round pick. Maybe they use that on a quarterback. If they could somehow pull that off, that would be great. Now that's unlikely to happen, but just saying the names Derwin James, Minka Fitzpatrick, Tremaine Edmonds, Raekwon Smith, just those players alone, just make your eyes. I don't like Tremaine Edmonds as much as I do Raekwon or Evans. I think those two are better football players than Edmonds is. I think he's more of a project than those two, but yeah, I think I love Derwin and I love Minka to death. I think those two players I love more than any of those other players, even at linebacker. I love Derwin James and I love Minka Fitzpatrick. So if the Dolphins have a chance to get either one of those two, I think they need to pull the trigger. Let's see here. Next news story. Did the Miami Dolphins offseason moves bring culture change? While many believe there are more moves to come, the bulk of the big moves should be over. Miami will continue to add to the roster and currently expect to meet with running back DeMarco, who last played for the Titans. Miami has felt the vocal wrath of some fans, but most fans understand what a move was needed in many of these cases. The Dolphins' formula for winning simply wasn't working. In 2016, the Dolphins made the postseason, and fans believed that even without Ryan Tannehill in 2017, the team should have been much better. They were not, and the cracks in the team's foundation were very, very clear. I don't know about that. I think the cracks in the foundation was Jay Cutler and Matt Moore and the interior of the offensive line. I think that was the issue, and the inability to get out to sustain drives. And I think a lot of that had to do with negative yardage, penalties, and terrible quarterback play. So I think that was the cracks. The foundation was Jarvis, Juwan, Jay, Kenyon, DP. All of those players, and I'm obviously leaving some out there. That was the foundation of the team. I had no problems with any of those players. It was everything else that was an issue. So I disagree with that. Let's see here. The Dolphins told me. Okay, here we go. Miami has said that they're going for a culture change in the locker room and on the field. That may be true, but what exactly is the change? What are they looking for? What is the breakdown of quote the culture? What Miami needs to fix? What is it that Miami needs to fix? Is this a leftover problem from the Joe Philbin era that Adam Gase is trying to fix, or did he realize that he was pushing the last 2 years and wasn't working? My opinion on this is it's a tough thing because I don't know Suh, and I know Jarvis wasn't in a locker room issue. I know he was a passionate player that gave everything he had. I know that for a fact. I think now the narrative with the talking heads and the beat writers and the Dolphins community is that it was a culture change, and I do believe that. I think definitely with the Suh situation, obviously there were reports that Suh was very hard to control. They tried to get him to be a leader. Obviously that never panned out. And I get that. And I think, and regardless, just from a football decision, he was getting paid way too much money. Even though he was a great player, one of the best players in the league, you can't pay that much money to a defensive tackle, and I think we've all realized that now. And like I said, that was more of a move if you're one move away, one player and one piece away from the Super Bowl. So I think a lot of it was also schematic, as much as it was culture. I think the offensive line is better than it was last year. I think we're more healthy, durable offense now. So yeah, I think it was a mixture of both. I don't think it was just the culture. And were there cracks in the foundation? No, I think that's just wrong. I don't think the foundation was Jesse Davis or the guard that we got from Chicago and Arizona. Those two previous, I cannot remember his name for some reason right now. It wasn't the issues with the team. That was the issues with the team. It wasn't Kenyon. It wasn't Jay. It wasn't Tannehill. It wasn't Jarvis. It wasn't even Suh to a certain extent. It wasn't the great players on this team. It was everything that was around them. And I think that kind of gets lost with most of these people, because it's a fact. Those weren't the players that were losing us games. It was the failure with the interior of the offensive line to be consistent in any way in the running game. It was the failure of Jay Cutler to be a consistent quarterback, and not, the man had 3 turnovers in one quarter against the Buccaneers. He had 6 in total against the Buffalo Bills. Like, those were the issues of the team. I don't think it had anything to do with our star players. And it sucks. It sucks that their names got slandered and players like Jay Cutler get off scot-free. I think that's not fair. And what I mean by slandered is you hear like, oh, J.J. was a locker room issue. Jarvis was a locker room issue. Suh was a locker room issue. Now, that could be true. But those were passionate, great players. But I'm just saying I don't agree with this whole, there were cracks in the foundation, it wasn't working. I don't agree with that. I think there were pieces around those guys that weren't working, obviously, but I don't think it was their fault, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the Dolphins have done a tremendous job of replacing them. And one of the things I do love and that I heard, and Adam Gase is absolutely right when he said this, I think the ball is going to be spread out a whole lot more. And he said that it's going to help us be less predictable. And I believe that, because there was a lot of times we were trying to set up Jarvis Landry and run after the catch situations, and the other team knew that, and they knew that was one of our only go-to moves, because God knows Jay Cutler's not taking over a game, and we just lost a ton of yards off of those kind of plays, and it just really didn't work. So I think now that we have variety, it's going to be harder to stop us, and I think play calling is going to be more spontaneous and more is going to have more variety, which I think is a good thing. All right, this last news story: Miami Dolphins. Which Miami Dolphin will break out? And this comes from Bleacher Report. They think it's going to be Raekwon McMillan, and this is the reason they think that. Miami Dolphins, under their second round pick on linebacker Raekwon McMillan in 2017, is going to address a run defense that floundered this previous season. The Dolphins allowed 140 rushing yards per game, 30th in the league, and 4.8 per carry, tied for 31st. So of course McMillan then went and tore his ACL during the Dolphins. That was 2016. That was not 2017. During the Dolphins' first preseason game, and immediately wiped out his rookie season. The Dolphins turned to veteran linebacker Lawrence Timmons, who's gone now after being released in a cap-saving move, once again leaving McMillan as the hopeful savior. He has that in him as long as his knee responds well. And as Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald reported recently, the first test will come during OTAs when McMillan is expected to be on the field. The 22-year-old posted back-to-back seasons with 100-plus tackles at Ohio State to finish his collegiate career. His best years for the Buckeyes came in 2015 when he ranked 5th in the nation with 52 run stops per Pro Football Focus. He has instincts and physicality to be a swarming presence against the run. Now he just needs to stay healthy. Absolutely. Hallelujah. I do not think... Here's the deal. If the only question mark of Raekwon, is he a 3-down guy, and can he cover on a consistent basis? Who knows? But I can tell you this right now. CJ Mosley, even though they run a 3-4, not a 4-3, which is completely different, and you can hide your middle linebacker more in the passing game in the 3-4 system, CJ Mosley cannot cover to save his life. And, he's one of the best middle linebackers in the league because he's a dominant force in the running game. I think Raekwon McMillan can be every bit of that and more. Same thing with Vontaze Burfict, who I think ran a 5.40 time or close to it. And he's in a 4-3 system and does just fine. And he's one of the best linebackers in the league. So I think that's kind of people kind of jabbing for it a little bit more. You see players like Zach Cunningham with the Texans who are just good for one thing. They're good at covering, but that's about it. They're just an extra DB. They suck in the running game. And I think Raekwon McMillan is just a great football player, which I think is a plus. So I can't wait to see what he does in 2018. So that is going to be it, guys. Let me know what you guys think about these moves. I think the Dolphins drastically fixed the offensive line from a year ago. I don't know why I can't remember the guard from Chicago, previously played for Arizona and the Buccaneers. I cannot remember his name for some reason. But anyway, the moves were great. I love the moves that we made. I love the moves of Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson and Daniel Kilgore and Josh Sitton to go along with Jesse Davis and Laramie Tunsil and Juwan James. And like I said, I think we have the best offensive line in our division, which is huge, unless things drastically change in the next couple months, but I doubt that. I mean, the Bills lost Cordy Glenn, who's a tackle, and obviously the Patriots lost Nate Solder, and the Jets' offensive line, in my opinion, is hot garbage. So, I am Skyx1383. Let me know what you guys think about these moves. Let me know what you guys think, how our offensive line compares to some of the other ones in the division, and I will see you guys in the next one.